Welcome back, everyone. We're back to A Plus Parents, and with me today is Ann Karako. Now, she's with Annie and everything, but her name is Ann. So I'm going to let her tell you the story, how we get the difference between Ann and Annie, because I had to ask her myself to find out. But what you should know about Ann is that she's a 22-year homeschool veteran. So she's been at this a long time. 5 kids, they're all graduated. She just graduated her last one, sent them on their way, but they're all successful and they're all thriving in the world. And so we have somebody who's what? Who's a homeschool mom who writes articles, and she has so many different articles. I'm going to read a few of the articles that she's published. So check this out. Are you ready? So, Cure the Fear of Homeschooling High School, a step-by-step manual for research and planning. Who wouldn't want that? Save your sanity while homeschooling high school. Practical principles for a firm foundation. And I saw this one just came out the other day. Taming the transcript. I love that because often, how many times people have contacted me and moms are like, oh, I'm trying to do my transcript. And how do I do that? How do I know what to plan? And how do I put something together? And then also looking at that, probably your most popular Facebook group out there is It's Not That Hard to Homeschool. And I just think that's just awesome. So, Ann, welcome. We've had a chance to do this before, so I'm super excited to have you here and in one of our, kind of our what do we say, like our kickoff inaugural events of people coming on this podcast. So thanks for being here. And why don't you kind of just share your own story? Just tell us a little about who you are, what you do, how you kind of got all this going, and then and by the way, you're gonna get all of Ann's websites and all her links and how to get to her resources and information she have, which is just a ton of information. So, and welcome, and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're up to in the world.
Hi, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Mr. I don't even know whether I should call you Mr. D or Dennis on here, but we'll
Either
see what
way,
comes
it's
out
all
of that.
good. Yeah, it's all good.
So yeah, just the quick answer to the question about Anne versus Annie. The website name is a play on words. Annie and everything is supposed to be like any and everything. Like I'll talk about any and everything, but nobody ever gets it. But what are you going to do about that? But the Annie is because my husband talks to other people. When he talks to them about me, he calls me Annie. So if I meet somebody that met him first, they'll come up to me and say, hi, Annie, so nice to meet you, or whatever. So I just thought I would play with that and come up with the blog name. So that's where that came from. But yeah, I go by either one. Yeah, so it doesn't matter. As far as, like history or my backstory or whatever, yeah, homeschooling 22 years. Homeschooling is a lifestyle, and we embraced it from the get-go. We actually literally decided to homeschool all the way through high school before our oldest even started kindergarten. We just knew that's what we wanted to do. And so we did that. And 5 of them graduated, all 5 got into colleges. All 5 are responsible individuals who I enjoy hanging out with. So what more can you want than that, right? I did start the blog about 7 years ago because I felt there was a real lack of understanding about homeschooling high school, a lack of resources for kind of the real people of the world. It felt like there were resources for people who had the kids that were really smart, but it didn't seem like there were resources for those of us who are a little bit more ordinary. And so I started writing about things like that, and it just seemed to resonate and meet a need for people. And so that's what I do. We were eclectic homeschoolers. We didn't follow any particular curriculum or style. We tried a bunch of different things over the years. And enjoyed almost every one of them. Mostly it was the idea of homeschooling that we were committed to, not necessarily how it happened. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Well, it does. And actually it gives me more questions, right? So here you are and you're, it's like looking at, you're working with young people, your kids who they're not, you're not looking at them like, oh my gosh, these are like the next Einsteins of the world. These are just kids that are just out to make a difference in the world and just be good, productive people in the world. Just the fact they can come back and they still like you after it's all over. That's a good thing, right? You can still hang out. So here you are knowing that you were going to homeschool and start before your youngest was even in kindergarten and take them all the way through high school. So what kind of background did you have in education that made you feel like you could do this?
So I was a public and private school teacher for a very small amount of time. I had actually started college for electrical engineering, believe it or not, and
That's awesome.
got 3 semesters in, and I was like, I have no idea what they're talking about, and I'm not used to not knowing what they're talking about. I don't like guessing on answers for things. So I switched out of that, but I had so many math and science credits that it made sense to go into something math related. I wasn't into science as much as, and I could handle the math. So I went into math education. So there you go. And I did teach at a public middle school for a couple of years. And then a couple of years after that, I kind of took a break, and then I got hired at a private school for not even a full year because I was pregnant with my oldest at that time. But all that experience did for me, it didn't really give me a whole lot more confidence about homeschooling per se. I think anybody can homeschool regardless of what kind of background they have. All it did for me was really confirm that, oh yeah, we don't want to put our kids in that situation, whether public or private. We just
Right.
didn't want to put them in that situation. We wanted them at home with us.
Yeah. Oh, I get it. Well, I think it's great because being able to say that you were a teacher, sometimes people, they might get a little confused with that because, my background is also in math, right? And, I've never taught a social studies class. I've never taught a reading class. I've never taught a writing class because when you do middle school and high school level classes like you did, you just teach the curriculum or the subject area that you're certified in, right? So here
Mhm.
you are
Yeah.
doing math, but that had nothing to do with reading and that had nothing to do with anything else. And yet you started to find your way. So, as you started to put the blog together and start to share with people, did you start off with kind of, did you notice that people were asking you from time to time, hey, how did you do this or how did you do that, or was it what kind of got you interested in putting the blog together? Because you've got so many different resources. Was it a lot of your own experience and things that you shared, or were you finding you were doing a lot of research too?
I don't do a whole lot of research.
Okay, yeah, okay,
I don't know
great.
if that's bad or good, but I
Yeah.
mostly just speak from the heart and from my own experience. When I was starting to research high school, so my oldest entered high school in fall of 2008. So that's how
Wow.
long ago
Okay.
that was.
Right.
I am totally dating myself here, but the resources were just not as much available. And I remember what I felt like as I was trying to figure out, how do you even homeschool high school? What are the requirements? Can we do this? How do we do this? What kind of curriculum is out there? All of those questions that you have. um, I saw that there, like I said, there wasn't a lot of information out there for people who didn't have the opportunity to do a whole bunch of stuff. That's one thing that I have always tried to say is anybody can do this. And there are lots of experts out there who will put so many conditions on it, who will
Mm.
tell you, oh, you got to do this, you got to do this. If you don't do this, you're going to ruin your team. And there's this big, long list. And yet I'm out in rural Missouri. We live 10 miles away from the nearest Walmart, which is actually the closest store. And and then we're a half an hour from the nearest small town and 45 minutes from the nearest small city. We're not gonna have the opportunity, gas wise, time wise, to go do a bunch of stuff. Um, Whether it be all the things that they tell you to do, the volunteering or the dual enrollment or all of the stuff, nor did we have a budget, especially at that time. Online classes were way more expensive than they are now. We didn't have the budget to do a bunch of online stuff. So our homeschooling experience always has been incredibly simple. And some people would probably look down on it.
Mm.
And yet we did what we set out to do. All of the kids got into college with scholarships. There was nothing that all of these experts said was necessary that we even did. And yet we still came out exactly in the same spot and without all of the stress and frustration. And um, as a fairly tight knit family, still intact. So
Yeah.
go
You know,
figure.
right. It's because, a lot of times I know there's the experts out there and and they say, well, you do this and this and this and this. And it's even like there's times that I meet professionals in a particular industry and I interview them. I talk to people in real estate, I talk to people in finance, right? And I want to know about their experience and how many times they don't have any. They just have
Mm,
that kind of textbooky kind of, here's what you should do, right? And
right.
so here we are. You've been there 22 years, 5 kids graduated, 5 kids went to college, all 5 got scholarships. So if you were going to, so I would say, okay, here's an expert here. This is a real expert with a proven track record, right? So what do you think is the most important thing that you would want parents to know about homeschooling the high schoolers?
Yeah, and I kind of alluded to it already, and that is just please be aware there is absolutely not one right way to homeschool high school. There are infinite ways to homeschool high school. And what you read out there from the people that say you should do this or you should do that, I make a big deal about avoiding the should word.
Mm,
I don't like that word because there's actually only one must do when it comes to homeschooling high school. Only one thing that is non negotiable, and that is to follow your state homeschool law. If you are doing that, then everything else beyond that is your choice. Now, there are some things that are wise to do, but they're not shoulds because in your situation, they might not be the best thing for you or for your teen. It just literally very much depends on your situation, what your teen needs, what your family needs. And these lists of shoulds are just burdensome and intimidating for so many people. Make the choices that fit your family. Make sure you know that you're following your state homeschool law, and then do the research to see what the other options are out there, but then pick and choose them carefully based on what's going to be best for you. Don't go by what somebody else says.
right. Oh, that's great. Now, when you're looking for like for your own state, so and people can pretty much Google it, find it. Do you
Mhm.
find like because you have a Facebook group, do you find sometimes that people come on the Facebook group and they're saying, "Hey, I live in California, I live in Georgia, I live in New Hampshire," and they're looking for someone that can point them towards their own state laws. Is it pretty easy for people to find? I'm gonna guess it is
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Maybe not
Um,
22 years ago, right?
right, right. Yeah, it was a little different back then, but nowadays you just kind of have to Google, state homes, Georgia, for instance, homeschool law, and it's usually going to have the website you're looking for is usually the one with a .gov, right?
Right, right,
Now
right.
there are organizations within each state. Usually there are homeschool organizations that are going to help explain that law to you, but I always recommend that people look at the law verbiage itself on the government website before they go to the explanation so that they can verify that that explanation is accurate according to the law, because it's in the end it's up to them,
Right.
right? That's they have to defend it for themselves what they're doing, so they have to read the law for themselves, or I just recommend it for sure. But then there are places, usually there's a state homeschool organization that will help explain to you what the ins and outs and all the details really mean.
Right. So it just really comes like anything else. Do your due diligence,
Yes,
and
exactly.
it's not like you're not trying to get a law degree out of this. You're just
Exactly.
getting information. So just to see what's needed, what do we need to do, and how we can create things. When I was looking at your blog on the transcripts, right? And what I really liked about it, because you talked about people that have a curriculum. So we're a curriculum provider. And it's interesting. We didn't even show up on the scene until 2010, and we just got
Mm,
started. We're 11 years old in the business because a homeschool mom came to me and said, "Will you please write your own course?" I was working with a young person who was doing some tutoring, and she said, "You say this in a way that makes a difference, and he understands it. Will you please just write your own course?" So it took me a little while to kind of get everything together to start doing that. But even somebody like me, and my background is in education and in math, and I've been doing this for a really long time. But to be in the homeschool world, which is where I really have found my own passion to be here, but it took something to bring that out. But when you were in the article, it was like you were saying, when you find someone that provides curriculum like I do, okay, well, you're pretty well set. But you mentioned something really cool about people that whenever they are looking at, they're creating their own course in time, and you talked a lot about knowing how many hours there are in a semester, so that you can say, okay, I've got this many hours in this particular area, whatever, it's personal fitness or it's something in history or science or whatever it is that you're doing. So when you were looking at that, I thought it was really great. I think people should read it. It was just dynamite in how you put that together. Um, And it wasn't rocket science. I read it and I'm like, I totally understand what's going on, and it's like, I can, when parents ask me, well, what do I do? I just forward them forward them your article. It's great, right? So it's
That's a
really
great
good.
thing.
So, I think that people could get a little nervous about the idea of state laws, but I don't think they need to be. And I think you kind of pointed to that already.